computers. I don't want to do that, but everyone gets wrapped up in whatever's going on in the 24/7 news cycle because that is a distraction. It is there specifically to distract you from the actual situation that's at hand. And that would be this. They are mainstreaming transhumanism right now. Human 2.0 is coming faster than you think. Will you evolve with the times? Everything about Darwinian evolution was a platform for directed human evolution. And I'm not even going to go there right now. I've got so much research to talk about on that subject. I won't, but that's not even the point. We're here now, so let's talk about what's here now. And they start with Ray Kurzweil. Of course, he's this guy who stumps for all of this stuff.
I say that your smartphone is an extension of you, and that you can't do your work without it. And if you leave it at home, you can't really function fully intelligently. People really accept that today. Even just a few years ago, people that did not seem realistic. Nobody can do their work or get their education without the brain extenders we have now. And they're going to go inside our bodies and brains.
A lot of his ideas, most of his ideas in his book Age of Spiritual Machines and otherwise are not new ideas. They're not original to him. They are taken from the cybernetics meetings, which we talk about at length in our film The Minds of Men. The stuff that they were talking about in the 40s, which kicked off all of this stuff, by the way. We wouldn't be here right now if those meetings hadn't taken place. Period. That is where cybernetics came from. It came from World War II. And the meetings, the secret, very secretive meetings they were having afterwards. And then that launched into the MK Ultra project. Okay? And all of these things are hand in glove. They all go together. That is what we discuss in our film. We discuss it at length. We lay it all out with all the research as to how that happened, who was there, what they talked about, and how we got. It's really that whole film, even though it's set back in that time period, that film is a large part of how we got here today, technologically speaking. So, Kurzweil comes out and says, our technology is part of our humanity. Is it? Is it? I guess in a way it is. I mean, you can't really go out in public without seeing people face down on their phones everywhere. I mean, there are people that freak out if you suggest to them, hey, have you gone to the store lately without your phone? There are people who can't get 3 feet into a grocery store in the produce section without making a phone call about broccoli. They just can't do it. They can't seem to function anymore without it. And he's talking about how we created this technology to extend ourselves. That's what's unique about us. Goes on to
members here, and we miss this place deeply.
Because there's so much creativity. We love night.
Always bring my son here to enjoy the miracle. It's not just like part of our ritual.
And there's so much to do.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing. They had so much fun.
Me siento emocionada de que nuevamente vamos a poder recurrir a algunos lugares cerrados como los museos. Ya nos hacía falta salir.
We have more stuff open to explore for the kids, activities to do, so that makes me happy.
Nighttime makes me happy because I get the chance to explore new things and want to be an astronaut, so I came to get some more inspiration.
Searching for a new Acura? Well, good news. During the summer performance event at Paragon, the search is over. Check out this month's offers on new models. Plus, you may be eligible for above market value for your trade, making now the perfect time to upgrade. Call, come in, or click now for more details on your new Acura.
Goes on to say, it's no secret that Google has transhumanistic aspirations. In 2011, Stephen Levy made a bold statement about the company in his book In the Plex, quote, "From the very start, its founders saw Google as a vehicle to realize the dream of artificial intelligence in augmenting humanity."
And if you think about it, computers can give you digital senses that you did not even have. Hearing and speaking and even understanding. So all of a sudden, computers are not the same as people, but they can really go back to that notion of making our lives, think of them as augmented humanity, making us better. Think of them as augmented humanity.
Period. Not to realize artificial intelligence as a way of realizing it. No, it was to augment us. Now, think about Google. It is the #1 website that's visited by people, period, on a daily basis. Kurzweil goes on to say the singularity will represent the culmination of the merger of our biological thinking and existence with our technology, resulting in a world that is still human, but that transcends our biological roots. And then this article goes on to say the term singularity originated in a 1993 essay called The Coming Technological Singularity by a science fiction author and a professor named Vernor Vinge. And that may be the time that everyone knows, or that may be the key time that really spelled it out. We're about to merge forever with this technology. But that's not the first time I heard that term. The first time I heard a term about technological singularity, it came from John von Neumann back in the 50s, which is one of our key cyberneticists that was in those secret meetings in the 40s that we talk about in the film that we put out, because he's one of the main cyberneticians that touched all of this off. He's the guy that first talked about singularity, and I think it's very interesting in this Forbes article where they're laying all this out, that the guy who is laying this out is trying to act like that didn't happen until 1993. It happened back in the 50s. This is a long ago thought about situation that they have been bringing about for many, many decades. John von Neumann was a frequent consultant to the Central Intelligence Agency, the United States Army, the Rand Corporation, Standard Oil, IBM, you name it. So this is not just any person. He also is a key central figure in coming up with game theory, which, by the way, is what's running most of society today, game theory. And the quote that he said when he brought this idea up was, "The ever-accelerating progress of technology gives the appearance of approaching some essential singularity in the history of the race beyond which human affairs as we know them could not continue." And SingularitySymposium.com goes on to say that his definition of a singularity is the moment beyond which technological progress will become incomprehensibly rapid and complicated. But that is not, after researching the man, reading his writings, and doing a whole film where we talk about him and his group, that is not what I believe he was talking about at all. And if you just look at the quote itself and think about it for a second, the appearance of approaching an essential singularity in the history of the human race, the race, beyond which human affairs cannot continue, because it won't be a human affair anymore. I mean, that's the way that I see it. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe these people are completely right, but I think there's more to it than just, well, it's going to be, the computers are going to be so insanely fast that it's just going to be complicated. And that's a really boring underplaying, I think, of what the ramifications are of what he's really saying there. But this person goes on with this Vernor Vinge guy, and he says, to grasp the significance of this guy's thinking, it's important to realize where we were as a society in the early 90s. Back then, the invention of smartphones and social media platforms were years away. The internet itself, now so vital to all aspects of our life, communication, commerce, entertainment, was in its infancy, and Vinge boldly proclaimed, within 30 years, we will have the technological means to create superhuman intelligence. Shortly after, the human era will be ended. 30 years. So he's talking 2023. And then this article goes on to say, just consider, here we are a little shy of the 30 years of Vinge's prediction, and the reality of transhumanism has not just caught on with the general public as a distinct possibility, it has become a living, breathing reality.
Transhumanism is the idea that man is merging with technology.
Transhumanists look forward to a future in which Homo sapiens is superseded by a better, smarter, fitter model, humanity 2.0.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens. In the medium future, within a few decades or a couple of centuries at most, Homo sapiens will disappear because it is going to upgrade itself into a completely different kind of being.
The theme of this conference is transhumanism in the hybrid age. We think that this is the most prescient, the most important theme that we could be talking about right now. We have a post-human paradigm impending for our future, and so we want to prep people, we want to explain what that is, and because it's inevitable.
I sought to tap into the cultural zeitgeist on this subject by interviewing Ben Kurtzel, Oh, wow. You know what? I'll just play a clip of this guy so you can get a general idea, and we'll move on.
As well as a singular term, I consider myself a cosmist. What this means is that I don't identify myself purely as a human being living in human society. I am that, and humanity is important to me. But I also envision myself as a sort of citizen of the universe, at a certain stage in the development of intelligence and life, going from long before humans and long into the future.
Yeah, he's the founder and CEO of SingularityNet and chairman of the Artificial General Intelligence Society and the Open Cog Foundation. And then he went and talked also to David Hanson, who helped Goertzel co-create Sophia, which is the first robot to gain national citizenship, just by the way. One of the creepier things I've seen in a long time. Like Vinge and Kurzweil, Goertzel is fascinated by the idea of transhumanism and makes the case it's not just pie-in-the-sky conjecture. Transhumanism has been occurring for some time, albeit in analog form. In a way, it's happening bit by bit, Goertzel said. If you take my glasses away, I become impaired, I can't participate in the world. And of course, if you take the smartphone away from my wife or kids, they go into withdrawal and become heavily impaired. Impaired is one word for it, but...
For those humans who choose to upload their minds into the computers, for those humans who choose to fuse with the machine.
The way he's talking, he's acting like you have to have a smartphone to exist, which is what they're trying to do in this society. They're definitely making it so that you really can't participate in things anymore if you don't have a smartphone, if you're not on social media. And he goes on to say many people fear transhumanism, and theologians fear will denigrate the soul's sanctity by achieving immortality. Yeah, the reason that theologians say that is because it comes straight out of Genesis 3:5, when the serpent came into the garden and made the promise that ye will be as gods. That's totally straight out of there, and that is why theologians say that. The way that they're saying this, they're kind of just saying, oh, theologians are just some crazy people that came up with that. No, they're coming up with it because it's one of the very first things that even happens in the Bible, period. Okay, that is why those people are saying that. I'm just saying. In the early 2000s, the editors of Foreign Policy asked policy intellectuals, probably in a very rhetorical way, what idea, if embraced, would pose the greatest threat to the welfare of humanity. And Francis Fukuyama, professor of international political economy at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, pointed to transhumanism, calling it the world's most dangerous idea. Writing for Psychology Today, Massimo Pigliucci stated, there are several problems with pursuit of immortality, one of which is particularly obvious. If we live much, much longer, we all consume more resources and have more children, leading to even more overpopulation and environmental degradation. That's fine to say, but it's pretty obvious that they don't really expect to allow everyone to live forever. I mean, I did a whole report not that long ago on Sean Parker, co-creator of Facebook, talking about because he's a millionaire, he's going to have access to better health care, he's going to live to be 160, and he's going to be like a class of immortal overlords. They're going to be living twice as long as everyone else because they have the money to afford the technology in which to do so. That is not going to be for everybody. So it's really naive and ridiculous to even make an argument where they pretend like it was going to be for everybody, because that's a big club and not everyone is in it. Not that you would want to be, because look at what they're suggesting here, that you have to merge with this technology in order to do it. And they spell it out pretty hardcore as this continues. Goertzel says in some ways we're already human-machine hybrids.
I would like to talk to you about the field of study that I'm involved in called cyborg anthropology, but first I have a quick question. Can everyone hold up your cell phones really quickly? So for those of you who held up your cell phones, you're cyborgs, and the people who held them up fast are more cyborg than the rest.
We have already a symbiotic relationship with our technology. In that sense, we're already transhuman. And I'm sure many of you here today brought your smartphones with you.
Your phone is already an extension of you. You're already a cyborg. You don't even, well, most people don't realize they are already a cyborg.
And if a caveman came into the modern world, he'd be astounded at how symbiotic we are with our machines. And that's true. I mean, without a computer right now, I can't even talk to you guys about this in the way that I'm able to do. But the computer is still separate from me. This computer is not inside of my body at this time. And this computer never will be. And if it gets to the point where that's the way it has to be in this society, I guess you guys won't be hearing from me anymore, because I'm not doing this. But there's more pragmatic reasons. Now we go to the controlled opposition other side of the argument with Elon Musk, talking about if you can't beat it, join it. A lot of people saw him on the Joe Rogan Experience. Elon Musk is the one who came out on the other side and said, with AI, we're summoning the demon.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure can control the demon. Doesn't work out.
He straight up says it in those terms. So in one hand, he'll warn you, like, with AI, we're summoning the demon, guys. Which is a pretty serious statement to make in a world that's supposed to be based on science and facts. And for him to talk like that we're summoning a demon. But then on the other side of his mouth, he's saying, well, we really have to merge with the demon.
If you see any rate of advancement in AI, we will be left behind by a lot. And so then we could be in given a benign situation, if you have some, if you offer intelligent AI, we would be so far below them in intelligence that it would be like, a pet, basically. Like a pet. Like a cat. Like a house cat. Yeah, it would be like the house cat.
Right.
Because he's got a company called Neuralink, where you will be putting what he calls a neural lace inside of your brain.
But what's the solution? The solution that seems maybe the best one is to have an AI layer, so it would be some sort of direct cortical interface.
And you called it a neural
lace. I'm talking about something which...
Where?
No, I mean it would be some sort of interface directly with your cortical neurons particularly.
So that you can become symbiotic with artificial intelligence. That way, it doesn't want to kill you, because it doesn't look at you as an ant or as some worthless animal that could just die and it doesn't care, because it's not going to care because it's a machine. How much is it going to really care about anything? But anyway, so he's saying we need to combine human brains with computers, which is what all of these guys are saying.
I'm not a big believer in letting artificial intelligence just roam freely. I think we should keep it controlled and merge human beings with it. And the greatest thing about within 20 years is that we're definitely going to have cranial implants. But eventually these cranial implants in our brain will be able to commune directly with machines.
By connecting our neocortex to the cloud, to synthetic neocortex in the cloud, and basically get, again, more neocortex. And that will be an enabling factor to create more profound vision, to be funnier, to be more artistic, to basically enhance qualities of humanity that we value.
Once we'll have cranial jacks for plugging in the back of our heads, you'll be able to go on BitTorrent and download new thoughts and feelings and upload them. And kind of hope you'll get a virus plugged into your mind.
Last year, for the first time in world history, a memory was recorded. We can actually take recorded memory and insert it back into an animal, and it remembers. This will replace the internet. It'll become a brain net. We'll record emotions, thoughts, patterns, behavior, and send it on the internet. Teenagers will love it. Imagine Facebook. You send emotions, your first date, your first kiss, your first senior prom. Teenagers already put little like happy faces on their emails, right? We're going to be able to record thoughts, and the movies are going to be replaced by the brain net. Movies today are a flat screen with sound. In the future, perhaps emotions and feelings will also be conveyed. This is called total immersion entertainment.
In an attempt to symbiotically join our minds with the machines. And to be clear here, when these people talk about your mind, they are not talking about your brain. Those two things are not the same thing. A lot of people don't recognize that. I have read enough books at this point by cyberneticists, by neurologists. There's something they were working on decades ago, and they call it the mind-brain problem. And what that essentially is, from what I can tell, is that they know all about your brain, the organ that's inside your skull. And they've been doing everything they can to learn about how all of the neurons in it function and what's all interconnected in different parts and how it works and everything else. But your mind, however, that's been much, much more elusive. They can't point to the place in your brain where your mind is housed. They can't do that. They've been trying to figure it out for a long time where your mind is. It's like the Pixies song, "Where is my mind?" Right? Where is it? They don't know. They'd love to find that out. They would love to be able to point to it on a chart and go, that's where the mind is. They can't. And when he says, we're going to symbiotically join our minds with the machines, that's a very telling statement. It infers quite a bit more than simply jacking your brain in to the internet like we're in the Matrix or something. The merge scenario with AI is the one that seems like probably the best, Musk recently said on the Joe Rogan Experience. If you can't beat it, join it.
The merge scenario with AI is the one that seems like probably the best. Like
For us.
Yes. Like if you can't beat it, join it.
So this is the controlled opposition other side of things. They're making it seem like you only have two choices, merge or merge. That there's really no third option of saying, I'm not doing this, because they're making it sound like if you don't, you'll be destroyed. Don't you find that quite interesting, that as a whole society, we are creating a technology now where the argument is you either join it or you join it, you really don't have any other choice? That's what they're making it sound like. I'm not saying that's what is the choice, I'm saying that's what they're making it sound like. A visionary himself, Gersel has long foreseen Musk's vision coming, yet he urges caution in its implementation. Quote, the next step to take is to wire these machines directly into the brain and body, rather than to have them held in our hands.
Once we'll have cranial jacks to plug into the back of our heads.
Clearly this takes time and thought because you need to be careful with sticking wires into human brains and bodies, but that work is being done, and it's not going to take more than a decade. So they have known for a long time, you guys, that this was where this was headed. It's not like they just got here and suddenly went, oh, you know what? This road is headed towards a singularity. No, okay? They have known about this and talked about this concept since the 50s, when von Neumann first started talking about singularity, and all this cybernetics and everything else which came out in the 40s, as we detail in our film The Minds of Men.
Is this like a collective AI in the Google sort of search, you know, where we're also plugged in as like nodes on the network, like leaves on a big tree. We're all feeding this network without questions and answers. We're all collectively programming the AI, and and Google plus all the humans that connect to it are one giant cybernetic collective. This is also true of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these social networks. They're giant cybernetic collectives.
Returning to Vinge's impressions at the end of the 20th century, we can see he was imagining a future that would occur sooner than he predicted. Gersel is saying it's not going to take more than a decade. That means 2028. That means within the next 10 years. It'll be before 2028 is what he's saying. It's 2018. If we take Gersel at his word, we're through Fukuyama and others hand-wringing the stage. We're now at the point to think about practicalities. Technology slows down for no one. Whether we like it or not, there's a pre-smartphone and a post-smartphone world. So there's a world before we had smartphones, there's the world where we have smartphones, and there's a world coming where there will be no more smartphones. But do you think people are going to give up that technology and everyone's going to go, you know, this was all a bad idea, it's interfering with how we function as human beings, let's just take a step back? Not a chance. Technology slows down for no one. There's a post-smartphone world coming. Presumably, we all know someone who is loath to adopt the new technology. Are we staring down the gulf at Human 2.0, which is only something that the movies have been predictively programming us for decades. Because think about when Hollywood really hit its stride. Also after World War II. Think about when TV came along. Also after World War II is when it really got spread around the world and became a household thing. That was during the 40s. And the 50s is when that really became something that everybody embraced. And so we have been programmed, and then think about the programming that came out right away. Things like Twilight Zone, right? We've been programmed for this eventuality as a species for decades and decades and decades, predictive programming. But here's the point. Here's the whole, I know I've been ranting about this now for a very long time. Where am I going with all this? Why am I so heated up about it? This is the part of this that you need to hear, okay? If you heard nothing else I said, right here. To put this dilemma in clear focus, Gersel advises considering the question not from your perspective, but from your child's perspective. He paints a picture, quote, imagine it's 8 years from now. All the other kids in your daughter's 3rd grade class are way ahead of her because their brains are connected directly to Google and a calculator. And they're SMSing back and forth with Wi-Fi telepathy in their brain, whole networks of people. I mean, what are we really talking about? We're talking about a technological hive mind, and here's the technology they're using right now to build us up to that. While your daughter sits there in class being stunted because she must memorize things the old-fashioned way. She can't send messages brain to brain. Goertzel suggests that you consider what you would do if your daughter's teacher brought you in for a parent conference and told you that your daughter couldn't keep up with her classmates because your daughter doesn't have a brain-computer interface jacked directly into Google. She's not communicating with people via Wi-Fi telepathy. Imagine the teacher suggested some form of upgrade. Now look at this, they put it in italics. You love your daughter. You want the best for her. What would you do? Can you imagine this is the situation that's coming? I mean, you can act like this is just some scaremongering thing that Forbes decided to put out, but it's really not. This is the way all of these people from all of these tech companies, Silicon Valley, this is how they're talking and have been talking for years now. It's just this is not the stuff they put on the nightly news because they don't want it widely discussed.
Actually, I just edited a special issue of a journal on mind uploading. It's the first journal issue on mind uploading with contributions by all these serious scientists.
They want you to just incrementally inch your way into this, and then you finally get to a point where that's just how it is for everyone, and you don't have really a choice. And that's what it says down here at the bottom. At this point, the prospect of transhumanism stops being an intellectual exercise and becomes a question of subsistence. Subsistence, as in you cannot exist without it. I mean, we were talking just a little bit ago about all the ways they could even do that. I mean, think about it. We're going to have computer-controlled cars. How much farther would it be to be a car that you can't control by computer unless you jack into it? Or the way that payment systems are made on the internet? Or anything. Or just stop making the technology altogether. I got my internet hardwired, and they acted like I was from another planet and a crazy person that came in a time travel machine. Like, oh, you want hardwired internet? That's so insanely old. Like, why would you want that? Why can't you just have Wi-Fi? It's everywhere anyway. And so they're not even really making that a possibility, and they'll just discontinue the older technology the same way they've discontinued, cassette tapes for discs and stuff like that. And once you start doing that, you can't really go back. I mean, you kind of can, but if they just stop offering you the older versions and they make it to where this is your only option, then that's your only option. And just by the way, the guy who wrote this, Neil Sahota, he's an IBM master inventor, but he's also a United Nations artificial intelligence subject matter expert. United Nations artificial intelligence subject matter expert. If you guys only understood the philosophy of UNESCO and the way this all plays in, it is kind of completely insane, the world we're living in today. We're at the precipice of this becoming the way society is. They're going to incrementally bring this in until, if you want to participate in society, having this brain interface will be like having a phone today.